In the spirit of Halloween, paranormal or not, what is the scariest, creepiest or most unsettling experience of your life? I was trick-or-treating with my friends in their neighborhood. We went all out on that trip, collecting candy all the way almost until 10 at night. We even covered a lot of ground, going about 3 miles away from the starting position at my friend's house. At around 9, we were pretty tired, so we decided to go to the other friend's aunt's house, then we would go to friend's house. As we were walking, we noticed that there were few houses still active for trick-or-treating, and even less trick-or-treaters. We thought everyone was inside, until other friend noticed a guy standing at a bus stop carrying a pillowcase and dressed up in a vampire costume or something. He looked at us and began to moan, and we were pretty creeped out. We agreed not to notice him and kept walking, not looking at the vampire kid. After we went to other friend's aunt, we started to walk back to friend's house, and friend and I wanted to see if the vampire kid was still at the bus stop. We agreed, and walked down to the bus stop. He still was. It looked like he didn't even move at all. He noticed us, not taking his eyes off of us, and we were all creeped out by him. As we were walking away from him, we heard some wheezing thrown in with the moaning, and other friend confirmed he was chasing us down. We ran as fast as we could, which wasn't impressive, as I didn't want to lose my yield, and I was really tired, and we lost the vampire kid in an alley. He ran down the road we were on, screaming like a lunatic, and we walked through puddles and mud to friend's house, where I waited for my mother to pick me up. My grandmother died when I was 15. A few months later was my 16th birthday. I come home from school and check the answering machine. There was a message from someone singing happy birthday. I swore it was my grandmother. I called my aunt because she sounded a little like my grandmother. Wasn't her. I figured I'd try my other aunt and it wasn't her. It's been 20 years and I still get a little freaked when I think about it. When I was younger I used to share a bedroom with my brother. My bed used to be against the wall and his was against the window. Every night for about 2 weeks he used to constantly get upset that he couldn't sleep at night because he could hear a voice saying hello repeatedly. My parents used to say that he was just imagining it before he slept because he was tired. One day my parents properly paid attention to what he was saying. My dad decided to lie next to the window where he sleeps, and it turns out that what my brother could hear at night was actually radio frequency that the wire was picking up within the window, and his hearing was good enough to hear the radio transmission. Early 2000s I was dropping a friend off after a concert, and she lived on the far side of a mountain, so most of the drive was in the woods. I came around a turn and on the side of the road was a 30-something woman dressed like a 50s nurse, like with the little hat and cape, standing next to a 50s-style ambulance, in the dark. She didn't wave for help or anything, she just stood there and watched as we drove past. The only light was from the light of my car's headlights. Writing it out makes it seem less scary than it was. I mean, it was the middle of the summer, it's not like it was Halloween. Not me but my mom. She is a nurse. She had a patient once who was an old man who she would always talk to. One day she went to visit in his room and he was standing next to his bed. He hadn't been able to get out of the bed in months. She had an entire conversation with him about how he was feeling better and everything. When she left the room, she went to another nurse and said something to the effect of, "Can you believe Mr. So-and-so? I can't believe he is standing and walking around, he looks so spry." At that point the other nurse said Mr. So-and-so died earlier that day. My mom is convinced she spoke to his spirit that day. When I was about 4 years old I was sitting on TH couch in my parents' basement that also doubled as a rec room. I start hearing slow footsteps coming down the stairs, and then in the doorway appears something in full combat gear and a gas mask. Of course, being 4, I immediately start bawling my eyes out, and the creature, my dad, proceeds to just slowly walk towards me until he got right in front of me and removed the mask. I've never felt so much terror in my life. Thanks, Dad. I have posted about this before, so copy/paste of my previous comment. I was house sitting for my then boyfriend slash now husband while he was out of town. His bedroom was at the very back of his house, so he had set up a closed system security camera at the front door that linked to the TV in his bedroom. I am not sure if that is the correct term or not. You could switch the TV to some setting and it would show you the front porch and door. Anyhow, I was there alone and it was fairly late, well past midnight. I was still awake but in his bed and watching the original Scream movie when the doorbell rang. I was surprised because it was the middle of the night, but I was familiar with his camera setup, so I immediately switched it to the front door view, and there was nobody there. I watched the camera view of the porch for a few minutes but could not see anyone. I chalked it up to a random ding-dong ditch thing and switched the TV back to Scream and the doorbell rang literally a second after I made the switch. I flipped back to the door view and nothing. It freaked me out terribly, so I ended up calling my best friend and she came and spent the rest of the night with me. I used to work landscaping for a huge shopping plaza, and behind the plaza was some apartments and behind that a wooded area where we had our barn where we stored our equipment. One morning I was behind our barn looking for some scrap pieces of wood when I seen something white through the trees. As I approached I realized it was a young girl and she had hung herself from a tree. She was dressed in a white nightgown and her face was dark purple, almost black from the hanging. There was a note pinned to her that said, "He will no longer touch me, goodbye forever." That was 20 years ago and I still think about her at night when I close my eyes. It was extremely disturbing. For anyone thinking about suicide, please don't do it. Call someone, friend, family, co-worker, anyone. Suicide Lifeline number 1-800-273-8255. One day when I was maybe 8 or 9, I was playing in front of the house with some kids in the neighborhood when this black truck showed up and a strange guy looked dead at me and asked if we knew kid with my name. Now, I was smart enough to know to quickly say no and run off with the other kids to one of their houses, as that was creepy as fuck. The next day and the same guy in the same truck swings through the neighborhood and does the same thing, except he proceeds to hang around until another adult happened to show up. He sped off and didn't show up again for a couple months. When I brought this up with my mother, she exploded in anger and told me never to speak to him again, which scared the shit out of me, but she didn't elaborate, except to tell me to never speak to strangers. A couple of months after that episode I saw that same truck parked at the end of my street where my bus would drop me off, so I told my bus driver and he took me all the way to my house. For the next couple of years I would see the same truck and the same guy pop up randomly and just stare at me from a distance but never attempt to speak to me. Over time it made me really paranoid that someone was always watching me, following me, and I've never really shaken that feeling. Well, I grew up the child of a single mother. My father was literally never around and no one spoke about him at all. I didn't even realize most people had two parents until I started school and literally everyone else in class did. Well, when I was 15 I finally confronted my mother about my father's identity and she gave me one picture of him. In the photo, the same guy who kept popping up in that truck, except maybe 10 to 15 years older. Once I knew that I tried to contact him against my mother's wishes, because I thought he just wanted to make contact, but I found out that he had been killed in a hit-and-run accident. I was 6, at least 2 full years before the guy in the truck first showed up. I worked in a group home for the developmentally disabled. I was doing a third shift, it was 4 a.m., the residents were all in bed, and I was alone. I heard voices coming from the room of a resident who is non-verbal, doesn't speak. Okay. I opened her door and turned on the lights, the voices immediately stop. The resident is quietly resting. WTF. I leave her room, and a few minutes later I hear voices again. I run to her room, open the door, lights on, voices stop. Now I'm really freaking out, because I know residents have died in this home before and there's rumors of hauntings. I start searching her room. Turns out the resident had mashed in the buttons on her stereo. There was an electrical short that caused it to turn itself on and off, particularly when the light switch in the room was flipped. That stereo went straight into the dumpster. A few years back, my parents would leave me home alone while they worked long hours. One night, I was cooking spaghetti. My oven is faced away from where a room with an attic is located, which is a good 30 feet away. Suddenly, I feel like I'm being stared down, so I turn around and there's a huge black figure. I'm thinking it's just a shadow, so I shove it off like it's nothing. No problem, right? A few minutes later, I turn around and it's getting closer. By this time I'm starting to freak out but still shrug it off. The third time I check to see it, it's right in my face. I turn off the oven immediately and run to an open area in my house, sit, cry, and wait for my parents to come home. Scariest moment of my life.